crescendo happens, and then people end up just like losing their shit and drumming with us, or like flinging drinks about, or shouting or taking their clothes off or whatever.
Hi, I'm Vlad Bresnix, and welcome back to the BresnixCast. We're now at episode number 51, if you can believe it. I've kept something going for this long, and long may it continue. And this episode, I know I always say like it's a belter and all the rest of it, but this one is a really good one. My guest was Matt Cargill from Sly and the Family Drone, and if you've not heard this band, man, they're so interesting, so noisy. I mean, I asked Matt a lot of questions about, the style and stuff during the show, but we got off on all sorts of tangents and fun stuff as well. It's just a really, really good show, and you're really going to enjoy it. I'm not overselling it at all. So what I usually do as well is I will usually play a song at the start, and then we'll get into the interview. But because what I want to play from Sly and the Family Drone is 29 minutes long, I'm just going to save it to the end. So what we'll do is we'll jump straight into the interview, and then at the end I'll play from the most recent album live at Cafe Otto, the first part of it. So without any further ado, let's get into my conversation with Matt Cargill. So I am here with Matt Cargill from Sly and the Family Drone. And I don't know what's just happened to my voice. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. And first off, I mean, I think the award goes to you for best band name ever. I didn't think I said that in my email to you. I mean, like, it's a belter.
It's it's sort of a joke that stuck around far too long and can't change it now. So
that kind of happens though sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's been good few years now, but it can't. I mean, not many people get confused with, they don't think we're a funk band really, but on occasion, somebody, like the other day, somebody came on the YouTube page or whatever and was like, "Hang on, what kind of music is this? This isn't like a funk covers band or whatever." I was like, "No, it's obviously not." But it's we're stuck with it, but it will do. I think it works.
I was almost jumping the gun there, but like for any of our listeners that might not be familiar with our stuff, Matt, why don't you tell us like about yourself and how Sly and the Family Drone got started?
So it was. It started off as a solo thing. I think the first show was like in about 2008, something like that. I was studying sound design, and I used to do a lot of projects like collecting cassette tapes, and when you see them blowing in the street, when you still could actually find them, people chuck them out of like their cars when they get all chewed and mangled up or whatever, and I used to collect them all and like spool them back up and make collages and make these sort of like physical mixtapes and process the material by hand and really try and sort of exploit the sound of it. So I did quite a lot of work with that kind of stuff, and then I started performing it live, and then played a couple of festivals, and I basically just wanted to get some mates in for free, and I was like, oh yeah, they're my drummers. And that kind of, we started making these sort of weird loops and rhythms out of it, and then involving the drums, and then for a couple of years it was a two-piece, just me and a drummer, and then a couple of other festivals, and sort of people, we had quite a lot of lineup changes and people sort of coming and going, and different different things happen and circumstances change, so people sort of come and go. But Oh, yeah, it used to just be like tapes and drums basically, and like effects pedals and feedback loops and that sort of stuff. And that's still essentially the core kind of sound. But we sort of moved into sort of, I don't know, like harsher kind of like stuff involving brass and other bits now, and less like tape based stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, you know, like I listen to an awful lot of noise music, and you know, some people you can tell they take it very seriously and stuff like that. And there's just been times that I've wondered when listening to your music and watching some of your gigs. I'm wondering, is this like a high level intellectual satire, or are you trying to push like atonal music as far as possible,
Um,
or both?
well, yeah, and that's a good question. I think there is a lot of space for humor in whatever it is that we do, and music in general. I don't like music that is sort of intentionally sets out to be funny or whatever, because I think it's just a bit, you know, or like wackiness or stuff like really sort of puts me off, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not something like that we try to do, or to purposely funny or anything like that. But I think you need to be, you know, self-aware enough to sort of, you know, not take yourself too seriously, and be able to kind of take the piss out of yourselves. Or like noise music's just like the most ridiculous thing anyway. You know, and how can you not find it hilarious? Like, you know, if you sort of take a step back and be like, what are you up to? You know, yeah. I think it's, but yeah, if you have to, you know, be able to laugh at yourself, otherwise it's just like, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it's funny because like I've got a friend who's quite an accomplished mountaineer, and like he says often they'll be like, you know, they'll be up some freezing mountain in a tent, like, you know, and they'll be saying to themselves like, why do we do this? Why do we put ourselves through this? And I've actually said the same thing at being at some like noise gigs and stuff when like my ears are bleeding and things like that. And it's that kind of thing where I'm not really sure why, but I keep doing it. And he said that it's kind of almost the same thing with mountaineering. They can't explain it, but they keep on doing it over and over again, you know?
Yeah. Now, when you've been on tour, or you're driving like hundreds of miles to go and play to, you know, a few people in a basement that are there for this quite strange music. Like we said before, you know, imagine if some alien species like is viewing us and they're like, what are these people up to? Like, you know, it's such a strange sort of pursuit. But it's also my favorite thing in the world, you know.
Weird
to get to share that sort of experience with people, or, you know, sometimes a very small amount of people, but that's fine. But yeah, I you know, it sort of, it's allowed us all these sort of great opportunities to, you know, travel and meet people you probably wouldn't do otherwise, and, you know, turn you on to other music, and, you know, sort of a whole, you know, world of stuff going on. It's it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's a really cool thing about it. And it's funny how some people maybe wouldn't get it. Like, for example, like I went to see, I've talked about this a few times in the show, it really did have an effect on me. You know that band Sunn? I went to see them before, and it was almost like, it was like a spiritual experience for me. Like, that was actually like, it was weird. It was the first gig I'd gone like as an adult, and it was the first gig in like God knows how many hundreds of gigs I'd gone to myself. It was just that case where my friends who were into that stuff kind of weren't about and stuff like that, and I was just like, I'm going to go anyway. And it was weird, man. I was just there, like the only gig I'd been to myself, I was just there myself, and just the way beforehand the smoke machine had been going on, and it was just like, it was just like a mad spiritual experience, and like hard to explain, but for me that's what it was like. But then if you take your average, probably, you know, normie off the street and put them beside me at that gig, they'd probably be like, what the fuck is going on here?
You're right. I mean, that there's kind of different ways you sort of can experience like Sunn. Like on the face of it, it's like this really intense, super loud, super powerful music, and I totally get that it can be a spiritual or like changing experience. And I've seen them a few times, and like I think the last time, and this isn't a or meant to be a criticism or a downer, but I fell asleep. But maybe because you just sort of lulled into this like intense, soothing sort of thing, and you kind of drift off, and it is like meditation or whatever. But and then I woke up when what's your man Attila came out and was like screaming, and I was like, fuck that, wow, that's, you know, like a total like jarring thing. I thought that was amazing. But a band like Sunn is saying about, you know, stuff like humor and music. Like Sunn is total panto. Like it's so theatrical, right? It, you know, there's the costumes, there's like this really intense sort of doomy atmosphere, you know, the smoke and the lights, and it's all like hyped up, and it's all about this huge performance. And that's total like theater, like, you know. But I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's it's not meant to be a criticism in any way. I think it's a cool thing. But yeah, I do think that it's you know, to sort of go, you know, take a look at it and go that this is like a pantomime, basically.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's almost like with Sunn, like I know what you mean about the Attila thing as well, because the first thing like I remember seeing was like the smoke had been going on, then all of a sudden he just like appeared out of the smoke and he was like all growling and shit. But like with Sunn, you're very much an observer. You're very much like you're observing what's going on. Whereas from what I can see from watching, like I've not seen you guys live in person, but from like watching YouTube and that, it seems like your audience are more participants in your gig rather than observers.
Yeah. Well, you can I sort of feel like you can choose to be either you're involved if you're sort of in the room. You know, you're like I wouldn't want to sort of force stuff on people who might not be like comfortable with it. You know, I don't think that's cool. Like, you know, like the hardcore show with like you're invading someone's space and you're like pushing people around or whatever. But so we play in the round, so like on the floor in the middle of the room, and I feel like if people are there and come to us like close and want to be close to the band and then can be involved, and there's like you're physically sort of involved in the performance, like you can feel the air moving from the speakers, and then it's sort of the atmosphere and sort of this intense kind of crescendo happens, and then people end up just like losing their shit and drumming with us, or, you know, like flinging drinks about, or, you know, shouting or taking their clothes off or whatever. And I kind of feel like if you're involved in that space and this atmosphere is happening, and then there's this kind of interaction, and it's not like we're on a stage, you're watching us, there's like a communal kind of thing happening, which I quite like, you know. Some people like absolutely hate it, like, you know, they're just not keen on being sort of that close or that involved. But you know, if people want to get involved, that's, you know, it's not like a fucking free for all like jam. Like someone's gonna whip out a guitar and like some bongos or something. That would be frowned upon.
Oh, you're talking about guitars. Just before I forget it, I remember reading a quote that was, I think, from one of your bios saying, "There is no place for guitars within this band. It's about time someone took a stand against all these fucking guitars. Goddamn things are everywhere."
Yeah, there's I don't know, like there was once or twice where somebody, like, it hasn't happened recently, I think we've sort of enforced that fact, but somebody just took it upon themselves to like plug in a guitar and start getting involved, and we like, stop that hippie bullshit now. It's, you know, I am, you know, I'm into guitar music of a fashion, but a lot of guitar bands kind of leave me cold. So I just felt like I wanted to see what we could do with a sort of, you know, 4-piece band setup, but not using guitars. it's sort of oscillators and drums and tapes and voice, and like baritone sax now. And I just feel like everyone's in a guitar band, so I didn't want to use guitars and see what other sounds we could form from that sort of setup.
Totally. And you're talking about like at your gigs, and you're saying like, people like they'll take off their shirts and they'll like throw beers and stuff like that. Do you think almost in a way that like if you create a certain sound, you can create a kind of psychological state? And here's the example I'll give you, right? I've mentioned this once or twice before on the show. I watched a documentary before about a prison that people had said for years it was haunted. It was in America, and people said when they went in, they felt cold, they felt strange, they felt like there was a presence there. And these guys had gone in with this like really sensitive sound equipment, and they'd found that the way the building was constructed, it created a very, very low hum that you couldn't obviously hear, but could make you feel like sort of cold and not well, and kind of, it could affect you, this low hum, but you wouldn't necessarily know, what was happening. So do you think in a way, like maybe sometimes you've got kind of the same thing, but in a different way? Yeah,
we're just, inducing these sort of certain frequencies upon people that, so that they're unwittingly kind of, sort of affected in some way. I think that's really cool. It's, I'm going to say, yes, that is exactly what.
So it is psychological manipulation. It's a government project. I knew it the whole time. It was obvious. But obviously, like, you must have played a lot of weird gigs. I mean, tell us about some of the weirder ones. Quite a few. I mean, I really like it when we get put on in sort of different spaces that aren't just like a back room of a pub or a club, sort of straight up set up kind of thing. A couple of years ago, we played in this. I think it was this art exhibition in Cardiff, which was in a. I think it was an old like bus depot, and they basically had a vault, so where they would keep all the money, and there was this exhibition in it. So we played, and it was quite busy, like good atmosphere, and we went on quite late, and everybody proceeded to get drunk or messed up or whatever they were into. It was good vibes, and then somehow these two guys had managed to lock themselves inside the vault, and nobody had the key or any way to get them out. So, and we slept at the venue, but it took every emergency service in Cardiff till like 5 a.m. to drill through the walls to dig these guys out. So it just was this continuous, like, intense drilling for hours. To dig these guys out of this totally sealed bank vault. That is mental.
And then there was a write-up, like it was in the local news and everything, and they were like, psychedelic drum band, Sly.
Psychedelic drum band.
Got these guys locked into a bank vault.
See, I wouldn't really use the term. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could. I wouldn't use the term psychedelic as like to describe, for example, your music, because I know you can have like forms of dark psychedelia, but I don't know. I think I just wouldn't use psychedelic. I think it's just more like noise or power electronic or something like that would be more appropriate. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I suppose so. I think a lot of like psych music is utter bollocks. There is a lot of shit.
Like, if you've got a wah pedal, it sort of puts me off almost instantly. And I don't know, man. Like all the using like stoner, and psych imagery and all that, I think is just like total nonsense. That said, we do get booked with a lot of those kind of bands, so just sort of alienated half of them.
I think it depends how you do it. I like some of those bands, but there's some of those sort of like stoner rock bands that are just total cliches. All their riffs just sound like every other band's riffs. Their lyrics are fucking stupid, and their artwork's just like everyone else's. I mean, there is those bands that stand out that can do it better than other ones, but like there is just so much mediocrity out there.
definitely. I mean, I suppose it's like that in any, scene or whatever. But I just feel like, yeah, and every town has a psych fest now. Like, and it's, I think the term, I sort of immediately think that it's not going to be any good. But I'm just maybe not into that kind of music really.
But as well, I suppose it's like, when you think about it, I mean, like when the psychedelic thing really started, like in the 60s, I mean, that's a long time ago now, and trends always change, and it's not like the kids that are listening to psychedelic music, some of them, but not a lot of them, so it's like, that's the thing. It's like, it's become like the older sort of boomer generation sort of thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I suppose, if there's like some old dudes still wearing their like Hawkwind, like or whatever, who are into it and losing their minds and reliving their youth, that's totally fine. That's cool. Like, but and like some of those kind of people like come to our shows, and that's cool. If people get that feeling from it, that's totally great. Like I don't I don't begrudge anyone that. Like, people can be into whatever they want and enjoy it in any way, and that's totally cool. I just like that kind of term and that kind of thing, and the way that psych's just banded about loads, and I just don't particularly like it, but that's just me.
I know what you mean. And have you ever been surprised? Something you said there made me think of this. Have you ever been surprised by the energy of some old guys at rock shows? I mean, I'll just give you like a quick example. I remember I went to, of all weird things to go to, I went to a Rory Gallagher tribute night. And
wow.
yeah, I know, weird, isn't it? And like, this was years ago. And there was these, like, I was just like up the back with my mate, just at the bar sort of thing. And there was these like old guys up the front that must have been in their like late 50s, early 60s. And they were pure going for it. And it was like, but they looked like they were probably, in their normal life, they were probably quite buttoned down and stuff. And I'm like, is this just the only chance you get to like break loose? And maybe it is.
Well, maybe it totally is, man. And that's like, that's cool. Like because a lot of people, they might get to a certain age, when you sort of in your late 20s and 30s or whatever, people kind of, or even sooner, might like drop out of music and they stop going to gigs, and they don't follow that sort of interest anymore. But then there are, obviously there's still a massive audience for it, but like a lot of people, when you're growing up and you're like a teenager, you go to gigs and whatever, and then you just sort of stop, and that you're in the real world, and it's just not part of your life anymore for a lot of people. But if you do have that sort of passion for it, and you'll keep going to gigs forever, until, you can't anymore, which, I hope that continues for a lot of people.
Oh, totally. And that's the thing. And then people, like, what you said is an absolutely total true trajectory of what happens to a lot of people. They go to gigs, they're into stuff when they're younger, then now I'm an adult and stuff, and then these people will often tell this lie of, oh well, there's no good music anymore, there used to be good music when I was into music, but nowadays everything's shite. And that's just because they're not looking for it. That's all that is. That's just them lying to themselves, because that's clearly not true. You know what I mean? You can't give me 1 year when there's not been one good album. It's impossible.
No, it's and people say that every year, and like, oh, this year was no good, for music or whatever. But it's there's always going to be amazing stuff happening until people, until music like disappears in some way. Like, it's going to keep happening, and people will seek it out. But yeah, to say that there's nothing good around, or like all these bands are shit, it's just not true.
But usually people that say that aren't really music guys anyway, if you know what I mean. They're usually the people that are kind of like, they'll listen to the radio and shit like that. They're not people that are usually deep into it. Well, not really in my experience anyway.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think, it is easy to sort of become cynical about that kind of stuff. But I do find that generally the people you chat to, or, that go to gigs or whatever, are really enthusiastic and have such a passion for it that they'll always be seeking stuff out, and they'll always go out to shows and buy merch or whatever, and those that atmosphere and that pursuit is really sort of really great.
Oh, yeah, totally. And I don't know, I was just kind of like, I was musing a bit about atonal music, and we were talking about gigs and that, and I remember like one time years ago I went to see The Orb.
Yeah.
And it was funny, like, because something like, even like back in the 90s when The Orb were doing like The Orb's Adventures and all this kind of thing, like it was, they would infuse like atonal bits. You know what I mean? So it was even like at that time you were actually getting like, and then you could like at the same time in the 90s, if you take like Nirvana, they were, for example, one of the bigger bands, they were infusing like atonal elements in. So I suppose it's probably like it's been going on a long time, but I don't know, I just kind of thought about that in the 90s, how like you could take like the rock and electronic scene and there was a lot of atonal going on.
Yeah, great. I mean, like for a band like Nirvana, who were probably the biggest band in the world, in the early 90s, they're and that kind of sound when it all exploded. But yeah, they're doing really long sort of intense feedback like passages in their music, and somebody that's heard like Smells Like Teen Spirit on the radio or whatever will go along and maybe hopefully have their mind blown by a really sort of intense, harsh feedback section. Like and then be like, what is this? Other people, that's like with anything, they might just be totally horrified. But when people are sort of infusing their music with these kind of other elements, and sort of that could be on the face of it quite strange, I think that's that's a really great thing to be doing and sort of subjecting people to do. Not in a sort of subversive way, really. It's just like, we are going to do this, and that's fine.
But it's weird because sometimes you get things that kind of seep into the mainstream, like I like a lot of Radiohead stuff. Radiohead have had a lot of good stuff. What I don't like that seeped into the mainstream, I don't like Muse at all, and I'm going to ruin Muse for everyone listening. See, even you listen to Muse, listen to any Muse song and you'll hear Matt Bellamy doing this between vocals. He does, and that will ruin every fucking Muse song you ever listen to. But I speak to like kind of normies on this, and they like there is some people that think that Muse is experimental music.
Yeah. Oh, like the classic is like everyone used to say Radiohead. That everyone would be like, it's kind of experimental, and they're like, what, like Radiohead? And they're like, it's nothing like that. But if that's your reference point, I'm just going to say yes. But and when you sort of chat to kind of real world people or whatever, about music and their reference points, you have no actual common sort of shared reference of music or whatever, like if I in my sort of professional life, and when I like other colleagues or whatever, I'd sort of try not to let on that I am into music in any way. Well, they know I'm into music, and that it's probably weird, but I just don't want to even engage with that at all, because it's just more trouble than it's worth, I think.
So do you not mention that on like a day-to-day basis, like what you do now?
Nah, not really. I mean, there's like an inkling, and some people like have found out and stuff. And in my old job, like I'm a sound technician. I used to work in theatre and stuff. And when sort of people within the organisation would find out, like years later, it's fine, and you're on Facebook or whatever, and people like there's pictures, and there's always going to be stuff that goes up, and like, doesn't matter, that's it now, like that's fine. But I don't know, I just sort of tend to kind of leave it, when chatting about music or whatever. And it's not that I don't want to engage with people about it. Like I just there was like a group WhatsApp with work people or whatever, and I was like, I'm doing this tonight, and it was like this really heavy, like intense drone thing. I was like, I'm doing sound for this tonight. In my other, outside of work, I was working for somebody else doing sound for them, and it's like real intense, sort of heavy drone. stuff, and they were like, "What?"
You mean noise?
And then would take the piss, like they're like, "When's the drums or whatever?" And I'm like, "Well, this is just what I like to do and listen to." And
where's the auto-tune vocals?
Yeah, that's my that's my evening's entertainment, and they're at home watching like fucking Bake Off or something. So it's a lot, but I seriously, I don't begrudge people like doing that at all. It's just my idea of a good time probably isn't the same as a lot of people's, but probably is quite similar to the people that are going to listen to this.
Well, it's like even like people I know in work and people I know like even friends of mine. Like I've got some friends that are into the same kind of music as me and some that aren't, and it's the kind of thing where like, like when there used to be like crap music on like in work or when I'm hanging about with my friends that aren't in it, I would be like explaining why it's shite and stuff like that, and they wouldn't be interested, and I'd try and play them some of the stuff I like and they wouldn't really be interested. And then it was made kind of clear to me when I talked to a friend of mine who makes films, and well, he was like, I was explaining this to him, like I'm having a problem with this, and he was like, well, do you like experimental Korean cinema? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, he was like, that's what I watch. And I was like, I do like experimental Japanese noise music, though. So I realized, like, I'm kind of the same sort of weirdo as him, just on a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. And it turns out I do like weird experimental films as well. I don't know if there is like a, sort of propensity for people to have these sort of niche interests, or like I don't know if somebody, for example, who's into noise would be into like rom-coms as well, just equally. I just don't know if that would exist. Probably someone does, but
probably someone. I've never met anyone though.
Yeah, I mean that would be, like people like to think of like noise music or like paraelectronics is really like, sort of weird or confrontational. Like the sort of weirdest thing would be if they were just totally up for, being into like shite rom-coms or something like, with no element of irony. That would be weird. that would be like more shocking and surprising than literally anything else that they do. Sorry.
Do you know what, that's interesting as well, and it makes you think of, there's this old raver in my work, and he won't mind me saying his name, Jamie, big shout out to you, big man. And like he's like sort of like, he's now like wife and kids and all that, and he's sort of nearing 50, but back in the day, man, he was like one of the original sort of rave guys. He, told me about what the original Disco Biscuits used to look like and shit like this, like he was back in the day. And funnily enough, even though he's like an older guy, he is like way more receptive to, like, me and him have actually talked about, I've actually introduced him to some noise music and he's liked it, which is weird because it was the kind of thing that he'd never sort of been exposed to, but because he'd been to a lot of these mad drugged out fucking like DJ sets and stuff like that, and they'd started like experimenting and doing all this weird shit, he'd like, he developed an appreciation for that kind of thing, and he just didn't know there was all this other stuff out there nowadays,
I mean, there is throughout these kind of scenes, and certainly in kind of dance music or electronic music rather, like a common thread. And I sort of do find myself being more drawn to like electronic music and the sort of weirder elements of that. And I can totally see where that sort of crossover would be. And it's a huge sort of world to explore, it's great stuff.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely mental. And one of the things I was going to say as well, I meant to ask you as well, have you ever heard of, you probably have, but have you ever heard of a blog called weirdestbandsintheworld.com?
I have, yeah, because we were on it once. Yes, there's some. I mean, I don't know why or how we came to be on it, because I don't.
It's like American or something. I'd never heard of it.
I think I don't think we're particularly weird. I suppose, like we were saying earlier, if an alien species were to view us, they would probably think that's quite strange. but in the grand scheme of things, and certainly within experimental music in inverted commas, I don't think we're very weird. But because some of the stuff on that blog is totally just like bonkers, you know. And it sort of goes back to what I'm saying about kind of wacky bands, or like, you know, like willfully strange, you know. But yes, I do know it, of it anyway.
Because they've like thrown you in with people that wear all sorts of bizarre costumes and like write albums about, like, I'm going to say about shite, but I mean that literally, like, you know what I mean? Like, I actually do. It's not just, you know, bad lyrics. It's weird, you know, like, because it was kind of like, I'd never heard of this blog before either, and then there was there's some mad videos of you at like the Supernormal Festival.
Yes, yeah.
That's
I think
mental.
I mean, that one, there was like a load of, I think probably the one at the time, it was from like 2012 or something. So that we played like in the middle of the afternoon. It's like beautiful sunny day in Oxford, you know, all the Oxfordshire countryside. But there was like loads of families around, and young kids ended up like playing the drums and stuff. And well, so that's not particularly weird or whatever. They've chosen that video like that after that show, and a lot of people had seen us at that festival, and then sort of a lot of things kind of happened from there, which was cool. But yeah, I don't know why they think it's particularly weird, but that's fine.
But isn't that strange as well, that like some people would say, for example, that, you know, to be different or out there, you have to be doing something kind of vulgar, and that's sort of like, you know, it's, you see it all the time on like mainstream culture that have given up watching television and other things like that. But like what you said there was kids there, and you're doing something that's perceived as weird and strange, but it's child friendly, you know, there's nothing like extremely vulgar about it or anything like that.
I you know, places like Supersonic and Supernormal, who are now actively encouraging these like kids gigs. So they had like Melt Banana basically play for a load of kids, and they would come and do like this workshop, and then have children make these sort of either noise making devices or just play along with them, or, you know. And I think the X might have done one as well, and loads of great bands who are doing it, or have done it before. Woven Skull, I think, did one as well. And yeah, these are all bands who are in like the realm of experimental music. And if you went to their shows or listened to their albums, like, yeah, they're you know, it's not straight up music. But yeah, for children to access it and just get the same enjoyment from it is great. Like that's such an amazing thing to be able to do and to encourage. Because kids don't, you know, it might be weird, but that doesn't matter to their brain. It's just, it's exciting and, you know, a thing that they're enjoying, and it doesn't matter like where that source is coming from. And I think that, yeah, that's something I'd really like to sort of do more of as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty cool thing to do, you know, to get kids into some decent music as well. And the thing is, I think why electronic music particularly is so pertinent, I mean, especially nowadays, I mean, because, I mean, we've got like screens and, you know, like you're standing in a group of people and you're hearing phone noises and all the rest of it, notifications and shit like this, you know, so it's like, it is the sound of what's going on around us all the time.
Yeah. There's, I mean, just an intense, like, you know, like kids sort of TV shows or whatever, you know, there's like mad colours and sounds and just this sort of really overbearing, like sensory stuff going on. And maybe that's what, you know, I don't actually know if that's just something they respond to or if it's just very basic or whatever. But yeah, in terms of doing these sort of kids shows, I think just to encourage that kind of atmosphere and being creative and within music is an awesome thing. And you know, because if people, you know, in their 30s would go to these bands gigs normally, and then there's like a 5-year-old child getting absolute enjoyment from it as well. Like, and they're hearing quite bizarre music, but it's not weird to them. It's just sound. Like that's a really cool thing, I think.
Yeah, because that's kind of that thing before you get like conditioned. Like you kind of understand things, and then you're sort of conditioned in a load of ways. Like I'll ramble about government schools and things, but like it's as well. Like, do you ever watch like you made me think of something like kids' TV shows like years later, and like I'll give you a couple of examples. I watched a load of shows I used to watch as a child years later, and like I watched one episode of Fraggle Rock, and there was one where they're all like in this part of the weird cave they live in where all the flowers give off this smoke, and the smoke makes them forget where they are, and they're just happy to lie about and do nothing, and it's not a good thing, and they have to save them from it. Or like the absurdity of like, I actually watched HeMan again, and for some reason, this is like completely off on a tangent, but this is the way the show usually goes. And it's like he's like a prince when he's fully clothed. So when HeMan's fully clothed, he's Prince Adam. But then when he's like half naked, nobody recognizes him. And like he's He-Man, and it's not the same guy, but he's wearing less clothes. I mean, it's like, what the fuck's going on with that shit, man?
I mean, that like the amount of people who've said something like that to me is not without note. Like they've gone, because it gets warm, and I like might take my clothes off when we play or whatever, and they've gone, oh, I didn't recognise you with your clothes on. Yeah, all right, but yeah, I'm obviously just like He-Man.
That's the direct comparison I was drawing. The physique sort of thing. And I just want to say, see for everyone as well who always gets this wrong, and this is for the listeners. This isn't for you, Matt. Castle Grayskull was what He-Man defended. That wasn't where Skeletor lived. Skeletor lived in Snake fucking Mountain. Castle Grayskull was the sacred castle that He-Man was protecting from Skeletor, basically. Just get that fucking right. People always say everything they hate is Castle Grayskull, and you're like, that was the good bit. You should be saying Snake Mountain.
Yes, very good.
I'm sorry to be autistic about this, but it just has to happen. It just has to be cleared up once and for all.
Right. Yeah, good work.
I'm a philosopher that works mostly in 80s kids' TV shows.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. I was watching, there's a documentary on Netflix about kids' toys the other day, and there was a whole bit about Masters of the Universe. And
is that the toys that made us thing?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it, but I've noticed it.
Great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know, maybe it is like a total nostalgia thing, but I was like, oh man, this is, there's this whole world of, people that designed these things and made these incredible toys that became such a huge part of, culture, and that they're, collectible now, and still, it's just a really, sort of really great, enjoyable program. It was, awesome. And obviously I used to have them as well, and like knockoff versions of He-Man as well, and, sort of dodgy Skeletor.
See, that's what's awesome, because, like, I mean, some people now, there is this whole weird thing that I don't quite get among people that are around about my age. I'm in, like, my early 30s. And, like, there's this whole thing about people with nostalgia and people wearing onesies and shit like this, and, like I've watched those things, like, again, and not for, like, because for some nostalgic purposes, because I was interested as an adult, like, how I would perceive it and how it would be different. But, like, even though some of the things are weird, you do realise there was a good, like, the artwork in He-Man was pretty cool. I mean, Skeletor was pretty cool, and evil in Snake Mountain and all that, like, and even, like, those other shows, there was a lot of kind of cool, well done art. And the funny thing is, when you watch He-Man, what you forget about is the wee moral lesson at the end, like, there's, like, I remember I watched one that was like, some strangers came into the palace and then they ended up being evil and that, and then, it's the end and He-Man's sitting down fully clothed and he's like, you saw what happened when people trusted a stranger. You should never trust a stranger. Like, you got this wee moral tidbit right at the end.
Yeah, I wonder if that was like a total afterthought. And they were like, great, we've done the episode. Now let's add in the extra bit where he sits down and chats directly to you. Yeah, it was like, fine. I'd totally forgotten about that, but that was actually a thing.
That for me is the funniest bit of it, and it's like I didn't remember it really when I was younger, but then as soon as like I saw the bit, like it's me and my friends were watching it, we all just burst out laughing. We were just like, "Oh my god!" Like, so we were getting all these like direct moral lessons, and we didn't even kind of realize, didn't even remember them like until like years later as adults.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, great stuff.
I wonder how many of them took though.
Well, yeah, I've taken that on board.
I don't trust strangers.
No, exactly. We've kept it with us. It did its job.
It's good, but we're sort of coming towards the end. So, like, what's in the future for you guys?
Well, we are well, not sure when this will go out, but we're going on tour in couple of weeks, starting on the 12th of October.
I'll put it out before then, so it's relevant.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. So it'll be our first gig since like this year actually. So we haven't played this year at all. So very much looking forward to that. It's been quite a long few months, but we're getting back on it. So it'd just be up and down England and one in Cardiff. Unfortunately no Scottish dates this time, but hopefully next time round we'll come up again.
Hopefully. Are you allowed back in Cardiff after last time?
Yeah, it's been a while, so I think the actual literal brick dust has settled now. So we should be all right. Cardiff's always great. And this tour we're playing in, a couple of places we've not played for a few years, which is really cool. I haven't played in Leeds for about 5 or 6 years. Newcastle, Liverpool, and then like Leicester and Brighton. 2 places that were really great on last time. When we played there about a year or so ago. New record on the way that I think the test pressings have been sent off at the moment, so that will come out soon, hopefully.
What's the new record like?
So for the last, I guess, almost 2 years, we've been playing like pretty solidly as a 4-piece. Myself, Kaz drumming, Ed electronics, and the guy James Allsop plays baritone sax. He's absolutely incredible. Like he plays, with proper sort of jazz ensembles, and he won the sort of young jazz musicians prize years ago. And I don't know anyone that's been playing music as long as him. For somebody of his age, is like so involved in that instrument is absolutely incredible. And so he'll go off and played a festival playing sax for the Last Poets, and then comes and does like a noise show with us. And I think to him, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying, like they're the same. He'll play a massive like well playing, and he played on like Pete Tong's last record and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Plays like massive gigs, like and is a very well respected musician, and then will just come and play with us.
What's he doing with you?
I don't know, man. I'm not sure, but last couple of things we've recorded have been with James, and we've toured with him. So that's like the sort solid kind of lineup, and has been for a little while now.
But jazz is kind of experimental by nature anyway, even if you listen back to like Thelonious Monk and things like that, you know what I mean? And like it's always been quite experimental by nature.
Absolutely. I mean, when you hear stuff from like 1967 and it sounds like it could have come out yesterday, it's just, amazing. And there's always that kind of thread there, and that sort of sense of collaboration. And like we did a record that came out last year with Dead Neanderthals from Holland, or the Netherlands, I should say. They so we that came over to England to play a show, and we just got together and recorded it live in the room all together. It was mixed and came out, and I've sort of listened back to it again quite recently, and was pleasantly surprised at how sort of like intense it was. You know, it's quite a harsh sounding record, and that's just electronics, drums, and 2 saxophones, but it's pretty brutal in places. I was pleasantly surprised at what we did. That's quite, but yeah, so we've sort of had this element of brass that's been involved recently. Like we put out a live at Cafe Otto CD, which came out like a month ago. And that particular show we had, I think we played as a 4-piece, electronics and drums, and then sort of halfway through the show, like given on our signal, we got, I don't know, 10 or 12 people who were playing brass to sort of like come through the crowd and just like burst into this real harsh atonal brassy herald, and then we all like played together, and it worked really well, and then this element of brass like actually became part of it. And there was a review that was like more like Dada theatre than like nice musical integration. And I was like, yeah, I'll take that, that's fine.
Oh, people like the Dada thing, like, you know, as like a precursor of like industrial and things like that. But let's do a quick thought experiment, Matt. Let me just take you somewhere.
Yeah.
So let's imagine you're sitting on a chair, a comfortable chair, a nice chair, a chair you like, and you have an acoustic guitar in your hand. Yeah. And you're going to sit down and you're going to write a folk song. Yeah. With this acoustic guitar in your hand. And there's not going to be any electronics. There's not going to be any mad synth. There's not going to be some shirtless guy playing drums. No one is going to be throwing beer at you. Yeah. How does that make you feel?
It, like, the thought of it sort of makes me feel quite uncomfortable straight away. Like, I guess, you know, I don't know whether a lot of people who are involved in sort of like experimental music or electronics, or, you know, electronic music came through guitar music.
I did. I'll tell you that after your
yeah, I was in a guitar band when I first, you know, my first band was guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, and it was like, you know, a sort of noisy rock band essentially, you know, traditional rock songs like structures and all that kind of stuff. And then you sort of come into it, but like I do, you know, I like acoustic guitar music. I like traditional songs. I really do actually like quite trad folk songs, you know, like old tunes. But I keep going back to like Bill Orcutt and stuff like that at the moment, you know. So like quite strange, odd ways of playing. And I don't know if you know this guy, Steph Ketteringham was in a band called Shield Your Eyes. He's been playing sort of solo for the last couple of years since the Eyes broke up. But his guitar playing is absolutely like without kind of comparison. He's so singular, like in the way that he plays, his style, the like sort of odd tunings, and just amazing actual free sort of improvisation. But then he'll bust out like a really heart-wrenchingly beautiful song as well. Like I just absolutely love his music, and we've toured with him as well, and you know, he's driven us and stuff. But his guitar music particularly is something that I absolutely love. But I could never do what he does. Like, you know, I do still feel like there's to sort of play in that way, you still should know how to sort of play your instrument properly, you know. It's not like you're just sort of going to start going off on a mad one if you can't like play a nice song anyway. I don't know. You sort of got to know the ropes first.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, actually, I'm the same. Like, my dad he was a bass player in quite a well-known folk band. That's all I'll just say. So I like grew up with folk music, and like I played the mandolin in like a folk band and things like that. So like, and I still enjoy that kind of music as well. You know, like. But then I started, what I would do with the mandolin is, again, like you're saying, like doing things differently. There's certain ways of playing the mandolin. I would play the mandolin more like a lead guitar.
Yes.
You know, than other people would, you know what I mean? Other people do that whole kind of thing where you do the really kind of quick strumming or the wee chords or something like that. But I would, because I was a guitar player beforehand, I would play it much more like a lead guitar. And like, I think it gave, you know, even the guy at the time that played the banjo with us, he had a kind of different way of playing as well. He didn't do your traditional picking sort of way. You know what I mean? We'd kind of, because we'd been guitar players and then we'd kind of drifted into these other instruments afterwards, you know, we'd started off there. And even in terms of like synthesizers, I mean, like, I was putting piano lessons when I was like 7 and 8 years old and stuff like that, and it was very rigid, and it was like an old woman, and it was what you imagine it was, and it was very boring, like, you know what I mean? But then like, and I did music at school, but again, just the shit they were making me play. I mean, I had to play Daniel by Elton John, and it was fucking terrible, man. Like, you know what I mean? And that almost destroyed my passion for music class at school.
Wow. It's quite unusual to play Daniel though, like at school. Like, that's not
that's a
go-to song, I suppose. It's quite a sad song, I suppose. Like, but fair enough. Like,
all the songs are depressing, even if you think about the Carpenters. I mean, like, I mean, like, Close to You, that's a depressing song. She's not with the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, poor Karen. Karen, we're thinking about you.
Oh, yeah, it's very sad. Yeah.
Oh, right.
You must have seen the footage of her drumming. She's absolutely rinsed. Like, incredible drummer.
I actually haven't seen that.
Oh, man. I think they pretty much started off like her playing drums.
I know she did drum, but I've not really, I've heard the songs, but I've not really ever seen any of like their live stuff.
Yeah, there's live footage of her just absolutely rinsing. She's incredible. Yeah, check it out. She's good.
I know this is probably a dodgy joke, but you wouldn't think that she would have the energy.
No. Let's.
Karen, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Karen. Right, it's gone too far. We're near an hour, Matt. I've actually really enjoyed talking to you, and I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, man, thank you very much for your time. Yeah, it's nice to chat to you. And hopefully see you in Glasgow at some point.
Well, hopefully soon. Is there anything else we should mention that we haven't talked about?
Just when you can, try and come out and see us play. And thanks for listening. What
we'll do is we will post your tour dates on the page with the show so that people can see them. And we'll probably do this. There's a show, the day we're recording this, there's a show coming out tomorrow, but we'll basically do it in the next few days. We'll probably put it out, kind of thing.
Amazing. Cool, man. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
So my thanks again to Matt for coming on the show. Like I said, it was a really good conversation. We got into a lot of different stuff. And I'd like to have Matt on again just to talk about like other stuff, you know, like I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure you did too. So that is it for another episode. Thank you for listening. The website, Bresnix.com. Follow me on Twitter at Vladimir Bresnix. In case you're not aware, I have an album out. If you just search Vladimir Bresnix on any of your favourite digital streaming sites, you will find my album with a lovely picture of me on the cover. So, as I said, we didn't play a song at the start because I wanted to do this at the end. So from the latest album, live at Cafe Otto, this is One.